Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel from Daily Hodl. Global banking giant says XRP ledger is a potential game changer. That game changer part is indeed a quote. So I'm going to cover this. I've also got a piece I'm going to touch on briefly. It's about crypto-backed loans, which includes XRP. And I'm going to wrap up the video with something not specifically XRP related, but a very interesting nonetheless major development in terms of infrastructure and maturation of the entire crypto asset class, which of course will ultimately benefit XRP, I do believe. Check out this piece from Daily Hodl. Bakkt says $600,000 in Bitcoin futures contracts bought in less than 24 hours. And this just launched here, the physically settled futures contracts. So, before we get rolling here, if you would please delicately tap that like button. And if you're a fan of Ripple and XRP, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. There are worse things you could do with your time, I assure you of that. Okay, so let's dig into this first piece here. And again, global banking giant says XRP ledger is a potential game changer. A newly discovered institutional-grade report from banking giant HSBC labels the XRP ledger as a potential game changer that could help cut across corporate boundaries and existing market structures. Oh, yeah, you think? The report is the latest in the company's Game Changer series and analyzes how distributed ledger technology, DLT, could lower costs and risks in the world of finance. It cites the XRP ledger as a compelling application for DLT in the capital markets that central banks could use to power real-time transactions. Now here's a quote. Check this out. DLT can streamline end-to-end value transfers, reducing costs, operational risks, and settlement periods. For example, Ripple's XRP ledger provides real-time cross-border settlements using tokens that represent central bank currencies. Okay, so the way they worded that, yeah, I'm sure they fundamentally understand the way in which money moves, but I think that they rather inartfully, if that's a word, I can't remember if that's a word, inartfully, I'm going to have to go to dictionary.com after this, inartfully structured the sentence here in their attempt to describe what's going on here. So, well, two things really. Ripple's XRP ledger, well, it's just the XRP ledger. Don't call it Ripple. They probably just don't realize that it's important to make that distinction. Okay, fine. We'll let that one pass. It is HSBC, and they're saying very bullish stuff here, so they get a pass. Fine. But then the rest of that sentence says, provides real-time cross-border settlements using tokens that represent central bank currencies. Now, in hearing that, some of your ears probably perked up and said, what the hell does that mean? Using tokens that represent central bank currencies. And again, I just think that they didn't do a very good job explaining what they mentally understand within their own minds. Presumably, because obviously they must understand how XRapid works, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt on that. So the blend of XCurrent and XRapid, frankly. But as far as the settlement portion of this, I assume when they say tokens that represent central bank currencies, they must be referencing XRP being purchased on an exchange in one country, using fiat, of course, and then you move that XRP to another country, and then it ultimately settles into whatever the local fiat currency is. And so what they're saying is, in the interim, while that XRP is moving, they're saying that's representative of the fiat currency. That's the way that I read it anyway. There's no other way that I could think of to possibly conceive. So I think it was just kind of a sloppy way to say it, and it could have been described better. It makes me think back to the early days of me entering crypto and trying to describe this stuff, but not really like fully knowing the best way to do it. So I'll cut them some slack there. But anyway. The piece continues, as for the potential impact of DLT as a whole, the report cites a long list of potential applications for the emerging technology. And here's another quote. DLT's ability to establish a single version of the truth allows it to cut across corporate boundaries and existing market structures. One of the most obvious applications for DLT is as a single asset register for an asset manager or broker-dealer. This golden source would eliminate internal reconciliations, enhance capital efficiency, and give clients or regulators controlled access to real-time data. Even more ambitiously, mutually operated ledgers could transform clearing, settlement, and reporting for OTC securities and derivatives markets. That is the aim of Corda, an adaptable DLT platform created by the R3 consortium, of which HSBC was an early member. As well as transforming operational efficiency, such a ledger would release huge amounts of capital by reducing settlement periods and giving users a single view of the location and eligibility of collateral assets. So the last part, obviously referencing Nostro accounts, all that tied up capital going to be released and used ideally for better things. Anything's better than just letting that money sit around collecting dust, right? Not the best use for it. There's a better way to do this, as Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse has aptly stated a number of times. Anyway, HSBC says there are still hurdles on the path to widespread adoption of DLT, but it believes the technology will continue to grow in the years ahead. And indeed, there are lots of barriers in terms of adoption. There's the regulatory clarity, and then you really need to see, and this is where, hope your business plan works, because it's like you have to develop entirely new corridors in order to make this happen. You got to lay the tracks so that Xcurrent can exist, which is really being adopted, I'd say, fairly intensely for a little San Francisco-based startup here that's been around for 7 years. But you will see increasingly corridors that utilize XRP. You just have to, you need more pools of liquidity available. And so, that means exchanges, for example, would need to jump on board and be official XRapid partners. But then from the perspective of exchanges, if there's not already demand, why should we do this? Because it costs money to be a customer of Ripple and utilize their technology. So that's the chicken and egg type problem right there. But it does tend to work itself out over time. And then here's a quote now. Of course, DLT is not going to replace current capital markets platforms overnight. Many practical hurdles to widespread adoption still remain to be overcome, as significant and healthy skepticism persists, a natural response to DLT's technical complexities. Even so, we expect the next 2 years to see more and more organizations derive growing benefits from a range of DLT applications. DLT will become an increasingly viable option in many firms' technology toolkits. As adoption grows, more and more organizations will begin judging DLT on its commercial merits rather than as a theoretical concept. In our view, every investment firm should take an active interest in DLT, even if they don't wish for now to take an active role in development. And so my favorite part that I read in that little snippet right there, commercial... Where's here? As adoption grows, more and more organizations will be judging DLT on its commercial merits rather than as a theoretical concept, which is the same thing as saying, hey, utility actually matters. And so if there can be a cryptocurrency, a native digital asset attached to a blockchain, which solves a real problem, it does indeed deserve to have a market value, as is the case with XRP, and thus staying power. Because businesses need it to conduct their business plans, right? And then, anyway, so here's the rest of the quote. We believe the next few years we'll see DLT developments accelerate. As adoption grows, more firms will view it as a mainstream commercial proposition instead of a technical curiosity. Engagement with regulators, developers, and other partners will become ever more important to overcoming potential obstacles. And again, think about this. This is coming from HSBC, major bank. I didn't look before recording this, but I know I had the fact for some recent video, and I think they're inside of the top 10 largest banks in the world. I apologize if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're that big. Maybe they're like the 8th or something like that, 7th or 8th, I don't know. Absolutely massive, and so they see a future for this type of technology. So, while this is not financial advice, I think it's wise to hold on to XRP. That's my humble opinion, and I'm happy to continue accumulating before the rest of the world knows that it even exists. All right, next here. Here's a tweet from XRP Crypto Wolf. He sent this my way. And it states, BitTrue official users will be able to pledge XRP, Bitcoin, and stablecoins to receive loans in Bitcoin, ETH, USDT, and XRP. So take a look at this article. I'm going to cover just a little bit of this. I find this fascinating. And it, again, directly has to do with XRP. So BitTrue, a crypto exchange with financial services, has today announced plans to offer loans to users who pledge cryptocurrency held on their platform. Starting September 30th, BitTrue users will be able to pledge Bitcoin, XRP, stablecoins, and more to receive loans in Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, and USDT. Over time, support for more altcoins will be added as collateral and loan options to maximize availability of the service among the entire crypto industry. Loans will be provided at low interest rates and with high loan-to-value ratios. Now, here's a quote. BitTrue's goal from the beginning was always to bridge the emerging crypto markets with the traditional financial services sector, said Curious Wang, CEO of BitTrue. Now that the BitTrue exchange has gained a loyal user base and trust within the industry, it's a perfect time for us to launch the first of our initiatives. We find this particularly exciting as it's an opportunity to provide access to financial services to all people, regardless of whether they're rich or poor or where they're located in the world. So, further, call it infrastructure, I suppose, or something along those lines, something tantamount to that. But more structure within the asset class, maturation, perhaps we prefer to state it like that. But how about that? And I've talked about this in recent videos, just the concept of basically DeFi, decentralized finance here, where you can put up, as is described right here, as I just read to you, a cryptocurrency as a collateral for a loan. Interesting stuff. All right, next tweet here. This is from @MalteseCrypto, who tweeted out, "If you're into XRP, then you should subscribe to the following YouTube channels. These are the top 10 in my opinion." And then you got @BackupBradley, you got Digital Asset Investor, Kevin Cage, Moon Lambo, whoop whoop, Alex Cobb, The Bearable Bull, Jungle Inc., Working Money Channel, Crypto Ginger, and Modern Investor. And so I just wanted to give a shout out. Oh, you just made my cheeks blush. Thank you so much for adding me in your top 10 @MalteseCrypto. I appreciate that. And so I responded, thanks for including me, smiley emoji face. What 36-year-old man doesn't want to use a smiley emoji? All right, next here. And this just kind of made me laugh, so I want to share it with you. This is a tweet from Rand Nooner, host of CNBC's Crypto Trader Show. And he tweeted out, and there's no additional context. This is just what he tweeted out. It's not in a thread. "At least no one is talking about moons and Lambos anymore." And so I responded, "Speak for yourself." And what else could I say? I mean, I'm Moon Lambo, right? So I just thought I'd cover it with you, made me smile. All right, last piece in this video, and this is from Daily Hodl. Bakkt says $600,000 in Bitcoin futures contracts bought in less than 24 hours. Crypto traders are closely watching the launch of the Bitcoin futures platform Bakkt. Less than a day after opening its futures contracts, Bakkt says 63 BTC have been entered into monthly contracts on the platform, worth more than $600,000 at time of publishing. Three Arrows Capital CEO Su Zhu, I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm bad with foreign names, anyway, says regulated futures contracts often get off to a slow start. He expects Bakkt to steadily and exponentially increase in volume over time. And here's a quote now. "Bakkt will be likely first a trickle and then a flood. The reality is that most regulated futures contracts get low adoption on day one simply because not all futures brokers are ready to clear it. Many people want to wait and see. The tickers are not even populated on risk systems, etc." Then the piece continues. "Bakkt itself has cautioned that it will likely take weeks, if not months, to see how eager interested institutional investors are in betting on Bitcoin. Bakkt's futures are the first to be physically settled in Bitcoin, which means investors will receive actual Bitcoin when the contracts expire. And that's a first. This has never, ever, ever happened before. Physically settled is good because it affects supply and demand directly rather than indirectly." And then the piece continues. "This sets Bakkt's futures apart from alternatives like CME, which are settled in cash. Because of settlements in actual Bitcoin, the platform could play a role in creating demand for the world's most popular cryptocurrency, potentially placing upwards pressure on the price in the long run. Bakkt's launch comes after a series of delays and months of questions on whether it would be able to pass regulatory muster. The final breakthrough came last month when the New York Department of Financial Services gave the go-ahead for Bakkt to launch its crypto custody warehouse." And so there you go. I think this is the cool stuff, and I mentioned this in a video yesterday, but I suspect at some point there will be XRP futures contracts. And I suspect eventually there will be physically settled XRP futures contracts as the entire asset class matures and infrastructure is built out. That's my Nostradamus-style prediction. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!